Since the 1960s, violence against girls and women has not substantially decreased. Despite nearly 70 years of painstaking political work, feminist protest and liberatory demands, misogyny and sexism are still endemic. My name is Caroline Coon. I'm an artist, and this is my short film called The Certainty Gift, a way to reduce violence against women and girls. And at the end, I would like to ask you a question. More than 10 women a month are murdered in the UK. And as was mentioned in the House of Commons debate recently, 98% of rapists will never go to court. In court, it is almost impossible to keep a woman's sexual reputation, to what extent she is a whore and is therefore responsible for what happened to her, out of a rape trial. Because violence and rape against women is mostly unwitnessed and revolves around consent and he said, she said, no amount of tinkering with laws against sexual crime helps. People are beginning to notice how miserable and unhappy many girls and young women can be, leading to an increase in life-sabotaging mental health issues. What I argue here, to reduce sexual violence against girls and women, we need a radical cultural change. To address culture, at the end of this talk, I'd like to ask you an experimental question and to hear what your answer is. But before I continue, firstly, when feminists, whatever our socioeconomic differences in theory and experience, critique patriarchy, it can be very uncomfortable for men. What is meant by structural criticism can be taken personally. Men often say to me, "I'm not like that." Understood. But we are all groomed and acculturated into a world structured on patriarchal power. None of us can escape it. Women are as likely to be as sexist as men. Men are raped too, although not usually by women. Since I was a child, I have had to consciously unlearn the culturally innate anti-woman bias drummed into me. Secondly, I'd like to thank the very many men who are consciously trying not to be sexist. Thank you. In my teenage years, the full truth of men's secret private sex lives exploded into public view. Whatever in the past was considered sexual deviance, the terrain of pornography, was brought into the mainstream as exciting and edgy. And once the full truth of men's sex lives was exposed, it became normalized as male sexual liberation. But male sexual liberation in the 1960s did little to change the cultural power balance between women and men in sexual relations. There was little agreement about the need for men to learn about and practice consent. Yes, stripping away the veil of hypocrisy was liberating for men. The pill was available for many married women, which helped family planning. But what of young women not yet respectable? Respectable as in married. How could women in general share in sexual liberation? What happened when unmarried women declared sexual autonomy and libido desires? What happened when all women attempted to seek sexual pleasure on our own terms? We all saw it then, and we have a name for when it happens today. We call it slut-shaming. Any woman today, whatever our class or colour, will know the cost of our sexuality. The downside of sexual liberation is that it gives violent male sexual abusers ample opportunity to plead in court that women who complain of rape are lying whores. By freeing ourselves to revel in male company and enjoy adult sexuality, women are exposed to the certainty of being branded whores. Being sexually active, like whores, gives men permission to rape modern women, since men are rarely convicted of raping whores. Being a woman, called a whore, personifies for us the danger of our sexuality. The consequence is, Today, not only are women raped outside the home, not only are women still being raped domestically at home, but now with violent pornography freely available, rape culture and whorishness has entered society and the bedroom with vengeance. In the 1960s, when young women like me said no to being kinky, which usually meant some kind of bedroom fantasy violence, we were told we were frigid. Today, young women, wanting to be nice, wanting to be wanted and sexy, don't yet know how to say no to an escalating extreme of fantasy violence, which is, in fact, actual, real violence, slapping, hitting, strangulation, torture. And the pity of it is, young men brought up into a pornified culture don't realise that most women do not want to be beaten up in bed. Young men are often embarrassed and shocked to be told this truth. Not every woman who is called a whore in the bedroom will be murdered, but it is a fact that most women who are murdered will have been called a whore, probably as they lay dying. Look, I'm no prude. I love the pleasure of sex. My sex love mode has always been more Kama Sutra inclined. Yes, there is an alternative to Marquis de Sade, sadism and violence. It makes me angry that the sexual liberation that I was and am so glad to champion, our hard-fought-for fight for adult sexual freedom and the pleasure to love how and who we like, our same-sex partners, has led to this: the normalization of sexual violence. This is a sexual liberation paradox. In trying to be sexually free, we have ended up imprisoned by violence, public slut-shaming, private violence in bed, posting images online without permission, intimate image abuse, revenge porn, a new social media violent sexual punishing of women.
Where does this apparent need for violence come from?
Over the last 50 years, generations of young women have come to interview me. Because I have been in the vanguard of a woman in a man's world, I'm always asked, how have you coped, or managed, or avoided, or negotiated sexism? I'm often asked, have you challenged men about sexual harassment and misogyny? Well, yes, I have. All too often, the male response to this challenge has been very hostile. If you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen. Heat being a synonym for sexist workplace bullying, assault, brutal name-calling, threats of violence. Inevitably, many young women trying to explain misogynistic sexual violence ask me, often in tones of genuine, bemused puzzlement, why do men hate women? This is a question that goes so very deep. I've thought about it a lot, ever since Germaine Greer posed and answered this question in her book The Female Eunuch in 1970. What plausible answer can I give? The hatred seems so angry, visceral, archaic and primitive, lost in the mists of time. Where is the love?
Here I start giving my reasoning for the experimental question I'd like to ask you.
Patriarchy positions women as weaker and inferior to men. It seems strange, then, that physical threats and violence are needed to control us. This patriarchal control of women, the slut-shaming, the whore slur that often divides women against each other, that keeps us in our place, that marks sexualized women and girls as unworthy of respect, seems to me to be fundamentally about family and reproduction. I think I have a clue as to where this fear that turns so quickly into anger and hatred comes from. Women do have power, the most important power in the world, a power that men do not have.
We can give birth to men's children.
Yes, we have the power to present a man with what we will assert is his child. Men's fear is, I think, that he cannot be sure it is his child. How can he be sure? Unless he controls women's bodies, possesses her as his property, keeps her covered, domestically imprisoned, in a burqa, in her kitchen, he cannot be sure that all his breadwinning hard work, his family money-earning male role, really will be for a child that is surely his. This archaic male uncertainty and fear of women's innate power was recently brought right up to date. Prince Harry, in his book Spare, revealed his father joking about the possibility he was not his father. The unsettling rumour about paternity has stalked Harry all his life. Whatever the doubts about who Harry's father is, his mother knew the truth. Diana chose to say it was Charles.
But the interesting question here is a woman always as sure as she can be who has made her pregnant?
Accidents happen. Birth control methods are not 100% effective. Timing fertility windows is difficult. There may be non-consensual sex that women need to keep silent about, in some parts of the world on pain of death. Whatever the circumstances of conception, the power to choose and name the father of her child is woman's power. In our archaic system of patriarchy, even in the most sexually equal society, is it this woman power that men fear? If it is, and let's accept for a moment that it is, then what can we do about it? The question I ask is, what cultural change would help reduce men's fear and thus angry violence and hatred against women and girls? The solution in our 21st century is science. We can make it simple. We can do DNA tests. As soon as possible after a baby is born, before a name is put on a birth certificate, women could freely give a baby's DNA test to the man she has chosen to be the father of her child as proof. Hold on. As feminist thinkers from Andrea Dworkin to Victoria Smith had protested, I too jive against the stereotypical woman's role, woman's obligation to clear up male mess, give service to the families of men, tend to men's emotional needs, to care and be kind. However, for self-protection, should women today take some moral responsibility to soothe men's fears and paternity doubts, men's perhaps unconscious doubts about trusting women that seem to turn so easily into misogynistic anger, hatred and violence?
This is the experimental question I'd like to ask.
It is a cost-benefit question and solution. The gift to men is for women to give up their innate woman power. The gift is to give up the convention that men should trust women to tell the truth of paternity. In return for reducing archaic, misogynistic mistrust, hate and fear, and thereby reducing violence against women and children, women could give up the power to choose the father of our children by giving men we say are the fathers of our children the DNA proof. After the birth of a child, give a proof of paternity certificate? Would this certainty gift help to reduce violence against women and children? Do you think men would appreciate such a radical but reassuring gift?
Would women, should women, give up women power and gift DNA paternity certainty to men?
Should we? Would you? Thumbs up, thumbs down.